Hey everyone, welcome to my video on how to download Visual Studio Code for the Windows 10. I will be showing you step by step how to download and then configure Visual Studio Code for my video series. If you don't know what Visual Studio Code is or what an IDE is, that's fine. You can skip ahead to the download section of this video. But if you're not really familiar with what an IDE is or what Visual Studio Code is, I can give you a very brief explanation. So an IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and essentially it's a fancy code editor or a text editor like Notepad that provides us with certain features that allow us to code easier and to code more quickly. There's features such as syntax highlighting and code snippets that allow us to produce code faster, but also catch bugs or catch incorrect syntax that we may have written. The next thing we're going to do now is we're actually going to download this and get it configured. So let's go to our browser, and you can use whatever browser you would like. I'm personally using Brave browser, but Google Chrome or Bing, whatever you have works fine. And type in download for, or Visual Studio Code download for Windows. It's usually the first link. If you do not see it at the very top, feel free to scroll down, but it tends to be at the very top. And it'll take us to this website. Now, depending on when you come to this website, in terms of what year it is, maybe you're watching this months or even years after I have created this video, this page may not look exactly how it looks now. Microsoft tends to change things around. Microsoft is the creator of Visual Studio Code, so they tend to change how this page looks from time to time. Don't worry about it. It's usually pretty plain and easy to find, easy to navigate in. If you're watching this in 2022 when I'm making this video, you can just easily click this Windows button, which says Windows 8, 10, 11. That is typically the download most people are looking for. It is the 64-bit user installer. That's what this link will send us to. If you're not sure what bit machine you are using, you're most likely using a 64. However, you can Google how to find what kind of system architecture you have. It's very easy. Anyway, go ahead and click it, and you're going to get a download. I will download this on my desktop. Why not? If a download does not start, just try this direct link. It almost always does, though. And if we scroll down while we're waiting, we can see some of the features that Visual Studio Code has. And it has support for tons and tons of languages. There's tons and tons of plugins you can use with Visual Studio Code. It's a really, really great program. Many programmers, including myself, use it today in 2022. It's the cousin of a well-known but a little bit of a more difficult IDE known as Visual Studio, which was also made by Microsoft. I can open it right here, and I'm going to open the installer and scroll through it, the agreement, click accept, go next. Now you're going to get these additional tasks. That's up to you if you'd like to create a desktop icon. I highly recommend that you add open with code, the add open with code options, because it's going to be very nice when you want to just open something in Visual Studio Code later. But most importantly, for the Windows users, make sure you do add to path. It makes life much easier when you're trying to run certain programs. It's going to ask, are you ready to install? And these are the additional tasks. Click install. I won't do that because I actually already have Visual Studio Code, so I don't want to override my previous configuration. Go ahead, click install. And I'll exit the setup. And while you're doing that, once you're done, it may ask you to download some additional plugins, some additional libraries that are related to Visual Studio Code, such as Chocolatey and Python 3. Make sure if you don't have those downloaded that you go ahead and also install them as well. They allow the Visual Studio Code to work properly. You may need to click through some terminal prompts or press the enter bar to go through the terminal. Now that you've downloaded Visual Studio Code and launched it, you're going to see a screen kind of like this. You may have the option to adjust the appearance of your Visual Studio Code editor. If you don't like the initial look of the Visual Studio Code editor, go ahead and do that. If you do though, we can continue on, and I'm going to walk through Visual Studio Code with you right now. So there's a few things I want to show you, and the first thing I'm going to show you is what's right in front of us. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to click New File, and I am going to click a text file. So it says Untitled 1. We can select the language right here. So I'm going to select JavaScript. Cool. And I'm going to change the name from Entitled-1 to something a little bit more human-friendly. Great. And now I have my hello world.js file. And you can see in here, I can type gibberish. I can type actual JavaScript code. I want to continue exploring before we do that. And I'm going to show you how Visual Studio Code works and what we'll be mostly using in this video series. So I'll begin with the top at File. Now, File will allow you to create a new file. Obviously, you can open files, folders, open recently created projects and folders, save as, etc. You also have Preferences, which allows you to change certain settings of Visual Studio Code. Now, you can change a variety of different things. You can change the font, how it's formatted. You can also change the appearance in here, which you can change to different color themes, which is kind of nice. So maybe I want, let's see what Abyss is. It changes to a nice cool blue color. Then we also have default light, which is, whoa, that's kind of bright. It's not how I would want to program, but hey, whatever you like. We have a bunch of cool things in here. Visual Studio Code allows you to download other themes, which we can get into in another video. If you're curious, go ahead and Google how to do it. It's quite simple. Actually, that one's not too bad on the eyes, isn't it? I like this one, Monokai. Monokai? Yeah, it might be Monokai. But I'll just keep it default dark for right now. Regardless, moving ahead, we have Edit, which allows you to undo, cut, copy, paste, etc. All the things you can expect. Selection is not too important. It allows us to do selection, and go allow us to do some text editing and define by specific strings within our text. Now, view is also interesting because we can change where the menu bar is showing. For example, we can show a primary sidebar like that. We can also show the secondary sidebar over here. It's quite useful. I tend to use hotkeys for these things. For example, the primary bar, you can just do Control B to change it, and you see it right here. Then we have Run. Run is interesting, allows us to do something called debugging to our code, which we'll get into debugging later, but debugging is essentially methods to find the causes of errors that are within our code. Next, we have Terminal, and Terminal is going to be super important. We will be using Terminal all the time to run our code. The Terminal is that cool thing you see in hacker movies and cyberpunk films about the computer science guy going in and hacking the mainframe. He's usually typing into some kind of terminal. We can pull up a terminal in our Visual Studio Code program as well too. And we can do that by clicking Terminal and then clicking New Terminal. And it'll show up right at the bottom right here. And this is a terminal. We'll be doing things in the terminal in the series. Very exciting. One of my favorite programming tools. And then on our left, we have the File Explorer. And here we have our open editor and the files that are in our editor. And then we have, well, your folder that you're working in should be over here. Although it says no folders open. You can click on open folder, and I'm going to do that. And I have desktop highlighted, so I'm going to select this folder. And now we have desktop open on our left-hand side, and we can go through the folders and the files that are over here. Next, we have search. This is going to be a very important tool. Essentially, we can search through all of our files within our workspace, which this includes our workspace. We can search through all the files, all the folders for specific words, and we can even replace the word that we're searching for with another word. It's going to be a very useful tool later. This is then source control. And source control is a very powerful tool. We will touch upon it later in this video series. It revolves around another very important tool called Git. And without going into too much details, Git is a versioning control tool. And next we have Run and Debug, which we'll get more into that in the future. And finally, we have the Extensions tab, which is a super powerful feature that Visual Studio Code offers. It's really quite useful because it allows us to essentially utilize third-party companies and also individuals' features in code. And the extension we are going to be using is an extension called Live Server. This extension will allow us to deploy our code just by the click of a button. So I'm going to type Live Server. I have already downloaded it. However, you should see an install button here. Once you click install, it should pop up in the bottom right hand side of your Visual Studio Code. If you're curious about what it does, you can click onto the actual tab and more information will pop up about it. And you can scroll through and read and see what Live Server can do. They have feature contributions. They have changelog, which tells you the changes that have been made to this plugin. It's really quite cool. Regardless, though, if this does not pop up on the right-hand side, try to exit Visual Studio Code and come back in. Sometimes, depending on the plugin, you may need to relaunch your Visual Studio Code for it to appear. Regardless, we are done. So in the next video, I will be showing you how we can actually write a line of code and make it do something. We're going to run and launch our first program. I hope to see you in the next video, and I hope you learned a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.